The next 6 weeks after that, I received a call from Paul Salvatore. And he said, Ricardo Jones, do you remember me from the negotiations at Ralph Lauren Polo? I said, yes, I do. He says, you have a case against this company by the name MBNA, which was an investment banker and insurance company in New York. And I'm representing MBNA, and we want to settle that case. Ricardo, I wonder if you can set up some type of settlement negotiations like we did with Ralph Lauren Polo. I'm less than 6 months at the EEOC, and I'm saying, hey, great, I get the opportunity to maybe negotiate a large settlement with a major law firm and an employment banking insurance company at the EEOC. Well, what he wanted was a fixed deal like he got for Ralph Lauren Polo, because the truth of the matter was the discriminatory practices of Ralph Lauren Polo were so bad that that case should have never been negotiated in the first place. It should have been taken directly to federal court, and the EEOC lawyers should have litigated that in federal court and eventually got a consent decree or got a finding against Ralph Lauren Polo. But because the fix was in with my friend who got me to the EEOC, which was Clyde Lochin, and one of the complainants, and it must have been 30 or 40 complainants against Ralph Lauren Polo. They were African-American and foreign-born blacks. One of the complainants' sister was an attorney who was representing the complainants, some of the complainants against Ralph Lauren Polo. So the deal was settle this thing and get a settlement and don't go to federal court. But on behalf of the people in the community and the complainants, the EEOC should have litigated against Ralph Lauren Polo, and they didn't. So the fix was in from the very beginning. But the tragic thing to this whole thing was my buddy, Clyde Lochin, who brought me to the EEOC, told me that he took $5,000 from Paul Salvatore, the attorney for Ralph Lauren Polo. And that $5,000 was given to his Steel Drum Club. He was a Trinidadian black investigator at the EEOC, and his son was in a Steel Drum Club. So basically, he went to Paul Salvatore, the lawyer for Proskauer and Rose and for Ralph Lauren Polo, and took a bribe for $5,000 to his Steel Drum Club, where his son was in. And the reason why I believe that he told me that is to condition me to say that, Ricardo, you can get money also. But because of the ethics I learned as a federal investigator in the United States Army and a military policeman, the first thing they taught us was never talk about a bribe, never take anything from anybody, because once you sell yourself to somebody, then you're bought and paid for, and you never can get your honor and your ethics back once you take a bribe. So,
how commonplace would you say bribe taking was by whoever, judges, lawyers, EEOC employees? Was that commonplace? Would you say that happened on a regular basis, or was Mr. Lochin an exception to the rule?
You know, at first I thought it may be an exception to the rule. I had been there less than a year, and a bribe had been paid to the person that brought me into the EEOC. But over the next 8 to 9 years in my tenure at the EEOC, I found that was a common practice that went on at the EEOC. And Clyde Lochin didn't invent that himself. He found out that these cases had been fixed at the lawyer level, at the director level, that many things that were illegal were going on at the EEOC. I found out in an investigation, some other investigation that I had conducted, that there was a senior lawyer at the EEOC who was taking bribes. His name was Lou Graziano. And Lou Graziano was an attorney that came over from the Department of Labor. Many attorneys transferred from the Department of Labor to the EEOC way back when. And Lou was one of those who was a Department of Labor, basically an age discrimination lawyer, that when they transferred the ADEA, which is the Age Discrimination Act, from the Department of Labor to the EEOC, he came over with that group. And he was on the tape. And he was taking bribes, and he was fixing cases for his friends, and he worked with the Assistant General Counsel of the EEOC, which is a gentleman by the name of James Lee, who is a sexual predator. Most of the female attorneys at the EEOC and some of the female workers, administrative workers at the EEOC EEOC have been sexually harassed by the Assistant General Counsel for the EEOC, James Lee. Now, the only reason why I know this is that those females had came to me and told me this because they were afraid to go public or to complain against
So the same agency that's supposed to protect protected classes, the people, women, minorities, you're saying that there is systematic, system-wide exploitation of women within the very agency that's supposed to look out for the rights of women nationally. Am I understanding that correctly, at least in that office, that women had no real recourse to avoid this?
Well, prior to me getting to the EEOC and after I had been there, I heard there was very promiscuous sexual situations going on between the managers, the attorneys, and the employees at the EEOC.
Exclusively heterosexual, or do they have the other kinds as well?
They were having some serious sexual issues going on with, because they have a large number of homosexual attorneys at the EEOC. So it was going on both ways, whether it's homosexually or heterosexually. There was a lot of sexual harassment and sexual compromising and sexual improprieties going on at the EEOC, so much that they couldn't really conduct the investigations that they weren't doing.
Did you ever have any situation where that happened to you?
No, I never had anybody confront me with a overt sexual offer. I mean, there was some type of request to go out or do anything that was basically off duty or whatever, and then that was it. But I've heard that Mr. James Lee, the Assistant General Counsel of the EEOC, would force other attorneys and force other administrative workers and other investigators to have sex with him so that they can move up. Now, I can only know this as a male if a female came to me and told me this information. And the only reason why they came to me is because they knew I wasn't on the tape, I wouldn't compromise myself, I conducted all investigations by the rule of law, and many investigators at the EEOC do not conduct investigations by the rule of law. Many of the investigators at the EEOC are not qualified to be there. They have a habit of hiring interns that have only been trained to dismiss cases and then hiring them as investigators. I don't know how you can take an intern out of college that probably never had a job or had very few jobs and then make them a federal investigator to investigate discrimination in the workplace when they do not have any employment experience, no background in investigations or law enforcement, and then have them do nothing but dismiss complaints at the EEOC.
Amid your career, your 10-year career, did you receive declarations or good job reviews or evaluations as an uncorruptible employee, as a senior investigator for the New York District Office? Did you get citations? Did you rise up to some degree in your job status?
I think based on my background and my experience, I probably was the top federal investigator in the whole country for the EEOC. I had more successful litigations than anybody else in my office. I brought in more money than probably anybody else in my office in settlements and successful litigations. It's one thing to have a successful investigation that finds cause, and I found cause probably more than anybody in my office, which caused a problem because they were only used to dismissing complaints. I refused to dismiss claims against African Americans and foreign-born blacks. The other black investigators in my office basically dismissed every case that they basically had because they had not been trained to know how to expose discrimination in the workplace anyway. But based on my experience in the military and my experience at the DEA and my experience in life, right, I knew how to talk to people and interview people and bring out information that most of the other investigators in my office could not do. But there was a systemic problem, and there was a conspiracy in my office to dismiss all African American and foreign-born blacks. We would have meetings of the black investigators, and they would say, Ricardo, you know you're rocking the boat by doing such a good job on these black complaints. Why don't you just dismiss them like the rest of us? They're just widgets. You don't know these people. Just dismiss the complaints and move them off your desk. I said, they're people just like us.
So these are professional blacks who have made it, who are saying, allow discrimination to happen against fellow African Americans as long as they receive their checks.
I would not call them professional. I would call them amateurs. And basically, they were yes people, and basically, they were Aunt Jemimas and Uncle Toms that basically just wanted to keep their checks. And they knew that the manager and the district director, Spencer Lewis, who basically wanted all complaints against African Americans and foreign-born blacks dismissed. But this went further than the district level. It went all the way up to Washington, D.C. Again, if you go to www.eeoc.gov and look at their statistics. Now, remember what I'm saying, that the EEOC considers a dismissal a resolution. Now, I don't know how a dismissal can be a resolution. A dismissal is a dismissal. So their statistics basically tell on themselves. But I have received awards from the Republican Attorney General of the United States in 2008 on Ellis Island for successful litigations against not Ralph Lauren Polo, but for Tavern on the Green, the largest restaurant chain in New York City, and Adelphi University, and Fox News Network. And that's just a few of successful investigations that I did and the settlements that I did. I think that I made a lot of waves against some people that had influence at the EEOC, especially Proskauer and Rose, who basically had an inside track at the EEOC by paying off Clyde Lochin and others at the EEOC. Also, the vice chair of the EEOC, her name is Leslie Silverman. She fixed cases for Proskauer and Rose while she was a commissioner and vice chair of the EEOC. She also worked on the Senate committee that oversaw the EEOC. When she left the EEOC after 6 years, you wouldn't believe which law firm she went to work for as a partner. She went to work for Proskauer and Rose in Washington, D.C., where she had been in 6 years and had been fixing cases for Proskauer and Rose.